Left, right, left, right.
For children of Ukraine, innocence is in the firing line. Your donation will give them food and first aid, water and warmth. Visit unicef.ie to have an immediate impact now.
Live by Live has all of your favorite music, and you can listen for free. Whether you hit play on one of our hundreds of curated music stations or create your own custom artist radio station, you'll find the music you love on Live by Live. Visit livexlive.com or search LiveX Live in the App Store or Google Play and listen for free now.
Welcome to Rebecca Sounds Reveille. Today's show is going to bring someone to you who is quite remarkable. And when I'm done, I want you to help me honor him as we bring him on. He's an Army combat veteran, both stage and film actor. He's a writer, producer, stuntman, an author, and even a boxer. While in the Army, he served a year with the 18th MP Battalion, along with the 306th MP Unit, OIF 3. And he studied with Stella Adler I'm going to let him tell you a little bit about that. But he also graduated from the NYU Tisch Drama program. And this is something you're going to recognize him as soon as you see him, if you're not already taking a peek. Or if you're listening via podcast or radio and you get a chance to check it out on some of the visual platforms, you're gonna know exactly who we're talking about today. But with us, oh my goodness, he has over 35 entertainment credits combined. So you'll want to check out his IMDb page, but he has co-starred with the late Victor Argo in the last film that he was in, Personal Sergeant, along with co-starring opposite of Matt Damon in Green Zone. This is, I already know you know who this is, but just wait for it. There's more. He's performed with Edward Norton Off-Broadway in Waiting For Lefty, along with Peter Dinklage in Taming of the Shrew. Mm-hmm. And he boxed amateur in the New Jersey Diamond Gloves under the training under the Hall of Fame coach, Tex Gonzalez. Yes, this is so exciting. And he is a company member of Pacific Resident Theater in Venice, California. So welcome to the show as we honor, yes, Jerry Della Salla. Welcome.
Hey, Rebecca. Great to see you. Great talking to you.
It's great to see and talk with you, too. You have done so much. You've started your life with just such a focus. One of the things that I really just want to honor and thank you for is the time you spent in service for us. And I just have to ask you, did you start in entertainment prior to that, or was this?
Yes. Yes. And my acknowledgement to your service as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. I actually did, my career path leading into the military was an interesting one because I had a full-fledged, you could say, theatrical career in New York, having, been initially educated through NYU Tisch and Stella, and then kind of the way the system works, it spits you right out into the theater track of New York. And I got fortunate upon graduation. I was swept up by an agency right away. And started to cycle out into a lot of good contract jobs in the theatrical realm under Equity for Shakespeare Fests, and that's where I met Peter Dinklage, Off-Broadway. Oh. Yeah, so that's where I work with Ed Norton. So I really had a full kind of theatrical career. I was working commercials and soaps, and as my career progressed, and at the turn of the new millennia, I had about 11 years behind me, and it really was with some, pockets of, of course, like everybody, unemployment, struggle. But I was blessed. I had also been, praise God, I had been converted early in my path as an actor, to where I started to do a lot of work for the Lord in church as well. But by 9/11, like I said, I had about a decade under me, and the attacks happened on, at the towers, which was right in my backyard. So there was a real cataclysmic switch, because it had affected me so much personally, that my priorities really, really started to shift away from my own interests and towards patriotism. And and I think 6 months after 9/11, I had found myself walking to a Harlem recruiting station on 125th Street. And I walked in to that recruiting station, and I was 32 at the time. Okay. So I was not their target number of recruitment.
Sure.
And I walked in, and to them, I must have been some old guy. And I looked around, and there was like a Marine table and an Air Force table and an Army table. And I looked at each one of those recruits, the recruiting NCOs, and I said, "Who wants me?" And I remember, the two, the Navy and the Air Force and the Marine table kind of laughed. And it was the only guy that kind of looked at me up and down seriously, was this Army guy in the back. And he went like this to me. And he said, I'll play this. And he sat me down. And because he was the only one, I started my, you could say, research into what this real career shift would be, especially for a guy my age. But he was more supportive in making like a pro and con list for me. And he started checking off all these things that were far more outweighing the cons. I think he only had 2 checklists on the cons. And everything else was a long laundry list of, you got a lot of reasons to go in at your age with your education. And I said, look, I just want to make a difference. I want to fight terrorism. I want to make a difference. I want to help secure my country. And about a month or two after that initial visit to that office, I remember raising my hand. Yeah, and that was how it began.
So did you go in under a general enlistment, or did you know you had taken a test and they told you this is what your MOS is going to be?
What it was I went in the reserves, and the initial entry process starts for everybody under the MEPS, and I ASVAB tested, and I tested high. So with a college degree on the university level and testing high, that same recruiter started to see, as you could most likely, imagine, a lot of bells.
Yes.
And a lot of whistles going that, I got a live one here that I could shift in this way or that way. I learned early, though, that the Bravo series for MOSs in the Army are the fighting series. And, at the time, I just, when we categorize something in the Army as 11 Bravo, 31 Bravo, that's a fighting MOS.
Okay.
11 Bravos being infantry, 31 being the MPs. So I said, look, I just, I want to be a part of something that, is a Bravo. And he's like, why don't you go MP? because MPs are very big on the reserve side in New York. It's a lot of history. Jimmy Cagney even did a movie about the Fighting 68th, which is a very famous unit that fought in like every offensive from like the First World War.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, but it's a guard unit, not a reserve unit.
Okay.
So he's like, look, we got the 800th MP right here in Uniondale, New York, which is Long Island. I said, I'm in. Sign me up. So what was funny was I was from my contract initially, I was signed up to be an MP. And from there, I got my MOS, and then I got a couple other MOSs, one in theater. And, I signed what they call a 6 and 2, 6 years active, 2 years inactive, if you wish. And the only reason I went inactive at that latter part of my contract was because I had a major movie that I was shooting. Mm-hmm. So I needed to be available internationally. So, but that's really where it started and how it went for me for those 8 years. And
well, I know just a little bit from some things that I've seen about you and heard you talking with others. Mm-hmm. On different programs. And I know that you had some time while you were in theater and have a story to go with that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You mean my play or my?
Yes.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yes. Thank you for bringing that up. I just started the final phase, if you will, of bringing me and my writing partner, Brian Ulrich, to a place where we're at that completed first draft of a screenplay of a play that I wrote. The play was called Camp Redemption. It has since been retitled for screen to Miracle at Camp Redemption.
I got chills.
Yeah,
wow.
It is loosely based on my tour. A lot of it, though, has some dramatic license to it. Mm-hmm. And there's a major infusion, if you will, of my faith-based principles and beliefs that I want to challenge the audience on, as well as invite them in to create a dialogue. And what's beautiful about meeting Brian is, he's a faith-based filmmaker, but he's very strong in I think seeking the truth. Not saying that other faith-based filmmakers aren't, but I think there's a pulse that he has on what it is in our genre of filmmaking within the industry that's working and not working. Mm-hmm. You can say what you want about what I call the crazy Mel misinterpretation, and by that I mean Mel Gibson. Whatever you know about his bio or his past, I've always said, look, does he make a really good movie as a filmmaker? Mm-hmm. And I think that's unavoidably yes. Particularly to me, the one movie that started the blitzkrieg, if you will, of faith-based films, which was The Passion.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, my God, that movie's ability to digest the time period, the language, the actual act of crucifixion. I remember when I came into the faith, for some reason, one of the first things I did was a study on the art of Roman persecution, under the state, and crucifying was the great thing that they had manufactured for penalty. But nobody knows, if you look at any movie prior to Mel Gibson's Passion, nobody knows really, sadly, the horror and the magnitude of that.
Mm-hmm. This is true.
Yeah. When you watch that movie, I remember watching that movie and saying to myself, my God, because it's so long
it is.
And he is not pulling any punches to showing you how graphic it was, people were fainting in the theaters when I was there, and this
That's interesting.
Yeah, no, I remember twice I went it was right before I was getting ready to get deployed. And twice at both separate occasions, somebody passed out. And, you know, because of the fact that I think what Mel wanted to do was say, you're a Christian. You say you believe, and watch what your Savior went through for you. Watch what he sustained for 6 hours. And then the 3 remaining were the cross itself. You know, to me, you can't hide that, you know, as a believer. And I, you know, so going back, what I'm encouraged about with my writing partner and about where we're at now is, you know, we've kind of, we committed to that mission with our script, and it's good to see where it's at a place right now, where, you know, we can kind of enhance it, you know, and evolve it to hopefully a similar end, you know.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I think that there is so much, not only on the acting side that you've done, but from a writing perspective, because the creativity that's within you just exudes. And then when you're able to bring it to life. So between what you and Brian have going, there's just going to be so much that is going to draw people in, and they're going to be just as captivated. Because I mean, you have really focused in on what you have envisioned, as well as made sure that the right person is going to be able to deliver that. And that is crucial.
Yeah, I prayed a lot about it. And I had a lot of people that were coming to the interview process. And I prayed for wisdom and discernment that, you know, ultimately the story's main objective, to glorify God, you know, behind the ultimate message, would be something that the individual I choose has in front of them as well. And I was getting a lot of candidates that were just, you know, they were highly critical of my play, and, you know, and they wanted to do all of these things. And no, you can't write something that's, you know, talking about the incorporation of miracles and faith. It's not a commercial angle. And I'm like, look, you know, what I need to know is, do you want to do this or not? You know? And their egos were kind of, even though they were, some of them, self-professed faith-based screenwriters or whatnot, their egos, I felt, were kind of coming to the surface more, as opposed to, you know, so
thinking too, Jerry, that is kind of, I don't know really how to articulate this, but that's kind of not right on board, considering all the fantasy between gaming and film that's out there right now.
Lord of the Rings. I mean, it was written by Tolkien, for God's sake, and it's really a metaphor to Christ and the return of the king.
So, I mean, when I hear that, I'm thinking, wait a minute, time out. I don't.
Yeah, and I guess the hangups, and Brian didn't have this, which is one of the reasons why I chose him, was that I'm basing it on real events. You know, the title is Miracle at Camp Redemption, and the subtitle is based on real events. Ultimately the story, not to give too much away, but the story thrusts us by our central figure, the MP sergeant in the movie, who experiences a miracle on the roads of Iraq while being ambushed. And, and you know the military as I do, Rebecca. Try and convey to a panel of military psych reps that that you're not crazy and that you saw this thing, you know, you know, good luck on that. But that's one of the challenges in the film. And, you know, and so, yeah, with Brian, he saw the potential of it. He said, yeah, this is great. You know, I mean, let's run with it. And if you're willing, I'll be the guy. And he was.
I love it. And you have more things that are going on too.
Yeah. I also, I used to produce a lot of poetry readings out here in LA, and particularly ones that were vet centered. I had been, it's tough with poetry. You're always hunting for a voice, your own voice.
Yes.
It's a sort of lyric or tone, a sort of tenor to your poetry that's separate from anybody else's, but you're not doing it with that in mind. But for that, I've certainly had a little bit of a focus for my work as a poet writer for majoritively war-themed poetry. And I just kind of finished, really, I would say something that if I were looking to get it published or produced, I would do that. And then that's kind of come around again, but nicely. It's kind of like the thing I do on the side while I do other writing things. So
I think those who have such creative abilities do multiple things. We wear many hats because there's always this one extension that leads into this other part of us. And then that leads into something else. Mm-hmm. And so I find it absolutely fascinating. So can someone hear you somewhere reciting one of your poems at a reading somewhere?
Oh God. I have thought about posting some stuff, and I think I asked you to forgive me the last time we spoke offline. I'm just not the Twitter, Instagram dude.
Yeah, I understand.
I have loaded up some poetry on Facebook in the past. I gotta have something where I can post it, create a web page for myself. I just don't have it yet. And a lot of the things I used to produce in LA, I'd like to say they kind of via Facebook or whatever social media, they've kind of run out. But I eventually plan on doing that. And Facebook is really, if there's any social media for me, it's the one platform I have. I do have Parler. I don't think Parler is personally, as much as I'd love for it to survive, I don't think it's going to make it.
I haven't been able to get that sort of off foot either. I don't know. So,
I can't understand how so many people have 10,000 followers and I have like 200, and it's been over 150. I'm sorry, it's been over a year and a half since I joined, and I've got 150 followers. So, I mean,
I'll tell you, there's some interesting dynamics when it comes to social media. But okay, so let me take this in a little bit different direction, but I want to tie it into both of these things with the work that you and Brian are doing, whether or not you'll want to bring that to stage. And if you are, hang on, because this is where this all kind of ties in. Our creative streaks go, like I said. So being a company member of the, Pacific Resident Theater, can you bring some of your work there?
Oh, I absolutely can. And I have, Rebecca, in the past. Actually, Camp Redemption, now becoming a screen version of that called Miracle at Camp Redemption, was originally produced as a full reading with the company back in 2014. Yeah, it was the launch pin, if you will, of me for the first time really sitting in an audience and listening to my own words while seeing them performance read. Yeah.
I've got chills. Wow.
It was a great experience for me and a learning curve. It's a beloved theater. I have not been there in a while. I'd say in about 3 years, because for better or for worse, it's a theater that, much like many of the theaters out here, they really adhere, sadly, even to this stage and at this 2-year juncture into the pandemic. They so adhere to, I just think so many of the falsities that are the regulatory CDC mandates of public consumption of entertainment or whatever.
Yes.
So, I'm not a vaccinated person. Okay. that would pretty much with that theater, and I would say 90% of the theaters out here preclude the entrance. It would prohibit me. Even now, when things have really opened up, and so there's a bit of a conundrum, I think, with a lot of artists who are not vaccinated, don't believe the hype. I can argue, as I might have with you, I think when we last spoke, how there's so many reasons that you can defend your purpose of not taking the shot, as to why so many personal religious exemptions you would have and should have.
Yes.
When you think about what, in fact, they're mixing this shot with. And yet, we're talking offline about Hollywood and about, as you, I'm sure know, the majoritively liberal entity that the entertainment industry is, when you're a strong faith-based conservative, it's really hard, to try and make headway or collaborate,
understandably.
It's very hard. So that's kind of where I'm at. Yeah.
No, I can completely understand that. And with that being said, I still feel that if that's the person's choice, I understand that, but respect the other side of the coin, that the other person has a choice too. And there's got to be a happy medium. You can't alienate people that are extremely talented, very remarkable people like yourself, and, keep this wall there when there's still not a lot of information that truly provides the education that's needed to make.
And I think you made a good point. Yeah. The wall, and that's a great way of describing it. There's walls, I think, particularly for that side of belief that have been set up by whether it's political leaders, their entertainment leaders, that are so fear-based, I
was just going there. Yes, I was just going to comment about that.
And that any outside conflicting opinion, which is based on scientific fact, it goes right over them. They can't hear it. It goes, in one ear out the other. And it's truly fear-based living. I've been real grateful that my daughter has been going to a private Christian school during all these years of the pandemic, because they never really shut down for but more than 45 days. And all of these public schools that were just completely shut down by the unions, parents that entered their kids into what I call the Zoom nightmare for their kids' education.
Oh, understandable that.
And the numbers that were reported now as to how destructive that was, how much of a failed effort that the Zoom thing became. I'm just so grateful to God that, we found a school before the pandemic started and during.
Yes.
That kept its doors open and kept my daughter going to a school in person,
that is really so necessary. I know that oftentimes I am such an adamant person about not texting, because I feel that there's no personal connection with someone. We misinterpret things and the lines of communication become so misconstrued.
Yes.
So it's kind of when you're young, you need to be able to know how to interact with other people. What are the social skills that are necessary? And by removing that and creating everything virtual, we're texting now virtual, we're talking virtual. And there's just things that are, it just doesn't work. So I know that, going back just to the vaccine part, and I'm not going to go into a whole lot. I just think that initially people were saying we have to do something to protect everybody. And so there was a rise in everybody being supportive of this, but there was so much left with unknown because there was no data scientifically. There just isn't there, and it's going to take years. Normal studies take a long period of time, and I understand it, but that's why I feel like there has to be an understanding on both sides of the coin. So it's just disheartening to hear that there's that limitation. But you've got so much going, Jerry. I'm really excited with you. I would really love to hear you maybe do a Facebook Live or something so I could just hear the passion of one of your poems. I would really enjoy that.
I'd love it. Yeah.
I would enjoy that so tremendously.
We'll set that up for the next one.
Yeah. Okay. That is, oh gosh. Now this will be a lot of fun. Okay.
Maybe I could be cooking some pasta in the background while I.
If you want to do a setup like that, I think that would actually be a lot of fun because it'll bring our Italian heritage to the forefront. We can talk about some things that, from a military standpoint that everybody's going to be able to identify with. This will be a lot of fun. I would love this.
I would love it. That would be fun.
I would love it. I know your time is so valuable and there's so much I want to share with the audience, but I do want them to really take hold of the stuff that we had in our non-fluff conversation. This was quite a very deep conversation with so much for those watching and listening to really grab hold of, because when they go back and look at you on screen, they look at you alongside Matt Damon, there's going to be a whole nother thought process going on. That's Jerry Della, and I know him. There's so much that oftentimes during interviews, we don't really get to know about somebody that makes them real, and you're real. And this is going to be very exciting for the audience today. Yeah. But before I let you go, I got this burning question about you being a boxer. Oh yeah. New Jersey Diamond Gloves. Tell me about this. This is a big deal.
Well, I was a kid. And if you know the boxing world, maybe you do, maybe you don't. But I grew up in the 80s, and a family friend of ours that my father knew this young gentleman's father when they were growing up in Orange, New Jersey. This lad would become a world champion. And he started his career when I was a very impressionable 10-year-old. And he started his professional career at the age of 18. The individual I'm speaking of is Bobby Chaz. And most people, he's a world champion, ex-world champion boxer.
Wow, that's a name you don't hear very much now.
Yeah. No, he held 3 different title belts. Anyway, as I was a kid growing up, he was a friend of the family. And I would go and watch his fights, and my father would take me, and I met him, and I went to his gym as a kid, and I just started to compete on my own out of inspiration. And I had about 5 fights in the Diamond Gloves. I was 4-1 as a young 14, 15-year-old. And then my mother, as you would expect with a good Italian mother, my late beautiful mother had put a stop on it right away when I came home with she threw a shoe at my father and said, "That's it. It's over. He can play football. He will not box." Mm-hmm. Fast forward to my time in the Army. Being an ex-boxer, my base in Iraq the commanders had created this way to get stress out of everybody by having a boxing competition. And I helped train a lot of my soldiers to compete in those matches.
That is neat.
Yeah. And I was like the trainer for hire on my base, and I'd spar with them and I'd teach them about, maneuvers and cutting the ring off and how to throw a shotgun jab and yada, yada. And my history with the Diamond Gloves as a kid kind of was something that they found out and said, "Yeah, I'm going to compete in this. Can you help me learn how to fight? I don't know the first thing about an actual, technique or anything." So I would do that. And I had a good handful of guys that were in my unit that, they did quite well. Some of them, most of them. So,
Well, this just brought even another whole component. I love it. Yeah. I love it. And I love the palette of experience that you have and the things that you've done. And I just really want to thank you so much for your coming up as in acting on behalf of patriotism and enlisting. I know it was a late age, as we talked about, but thank you so much. I know there's more that we can talk about in the time of service and things within there, but thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we will. Absolutely.
Yes. I'm jazzed at a lot of the things that we have coming. I'm just like, oh gosh, I want to talk about this, and the other thing. But thank you so much for your time with us today. I do appreciate it. And I know the audience is going to be, they're going to go back and rewatch things now. And this is what we want them to do. We want them to get to know you. And then we're going to be talking about some other things. So thank you so much. Tell the audience too, what's the best thing for you that you would like their call to action to be? Connecting with you on Facebook, or what would you like the audience to do?
In pursuit of my endeavors or in their own? Stay tuned. Stay tuned via Facebook, IMDb. Again, I have thought about, and I'm in the works of putting up a webpage for myself.
Beautiful.
So yeah, and stay tuned to this show as I hope to return. Again, I'm an old timer, so I never jumped on the Twitter, Instagram bandwagon. Maybe that's best, but I am on Parler, so you can find me there. Beautiful. Stay tuned.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rebecca. All right.
And I want to thank all of you for tuning in to another episode of Rebecca Sounds Reveille. If you have not had a chance to see any of the films that we talked about today, and you also want to see more, head on over to Jerry's IMDb. I'll have that in the links, and you'll be able to find it through me. Even if you say, I can't find it, you email me, RebeccaMahan@publicist.com. I'll tell you what, I'll get it out to you. You've got to see that his work, even if you just get to see the reel on it on YouTube, that you're going to, as soon as you watch that, you're going to be just like, okay, which streaming service? Because I'm not leaving my house. I want to watch the rest of this, the beginning, the middle and end right now. Anyway, thanks for taking a moment to get to know Jerry a little bit better. There's so much about him. There's so many things that you're going to be able to acquire just through hearing the things that he's done and watching them. And I challenge you to send us a message and see what is the first thing that moved you. I ask that you share this with all your friends, family, everybody on social media, and everybody that you don't. Thanks for tuning in.